Welcome back, Cigar Talk. I'm your host, Rob Jones. This week's episode is a special interview we recorded this last week at TPE22 in Las Vegas, Nevada. We had a great time out there. We met a lot of people, had a great time, and we'll be giving these interviews to you guys. Every so often, we'll spread them out through the episodes. This week's episode has Michael Herklots from Ferio Tego. And let me tell you what, this guy's making some fantastic cigars. I had the pleasure of smoking one during the interview. We'll get to that here in a bit. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about our sponsors right quick. We've got The Leaf. If you want the experience, drop by The Leaf at 1166 North 2nd in Abilene, Texas. And if you need some cigars, call them up. They'll ship them to you anywhere. Next is going to be Tabanero Cigars, which also was my cigar of the year. Look down the show notes. You can go by his site and order up some Tabanero. If you haven't tried them yet, it's the boutiques of the boutiques. Then we have the one and only McAuliffe Cigars. The guys have supported us forever. We love their products. We love the team. We love the owner. If you haven't smoked McAuliffe Cigars yet, make sure you check them out. We'll have a link in the show notes. And then finally, but not least, is Case Elegance. We love these guys. They make great products, ones that you're going to buy and be proud of, and they get the job done. So look down the show notes and go by and check out what Case Elegance has for you. Anyway, guys, we're going to get right to it. Here comes Michael Herklots right after a quick little break. Hey, guys, thanks for hanging through the break. We have a special guest. We're here at TPE22. We've got Michael Herklots. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir. Michael Herklots.
That's impressive that I can say that.
Well done.
Most names, blow them out of the water. Tell me about the cigar you brought me, man.
Man, you are smoking the Timeless Sterling. I've got the Timeless Panamericana. The Sterling is made in Dominican. The blend we developed, it must have been 2014 or so. It was a blend formerly sold by Nat Sherman International, which is where I worked for the last 9 years before starting Ferio Tego. But Sterling for me is it's a really special blend.
Pull that up a little bit so I can get.
Yeah, how's that?
There you go.
Hey, how you doing?
You're good.
Check. Sterling is it's a very special blend. It has so much body and presence, but it's so elegant and creamy and refreshing. You know,
I love that. It hasn't been that long since I really got into the creamy essence of lighter cigars. Everybody goes down the road. I came back around, and now this is like what I really look forward to smoking.
It's all Dominican. The interesting thing about that blend is we do use a little bit of Ligero in the blend, so top of the plant, but it's very old Ligero. And so when you take strong tobacco and you put 10 years on it, it preserves this kind of character and structure, but it removes the ferocity.
It's like it softens it.
Yeah. And so that's really, I think, kind of the hallmark characteristic of Sterling. Boxes of 10. It's not inexpensive, but I think it tops out around $15 if I recall.
That's not bad.
But it's a hell of a good blend. And then I'm smoking the Timeless Panamericana, similar in price, made in Nicaragua with the Plasencia family. And this is a fun blend. This is Nicaragua and Costa Rica filler, Nicaragua binder, Ecuador Sumatra wrapper. And this one I worked on a long time. Back in the 90s, actually late 90s, early 2000s, there was a very famous brand called Bahia. And it was made by this guy, Don Douglas Porringer, in Costa Rica. And those cigars at that, I'm sure it's a bit like time and place, moment in time kind of thing, but I mean, those cigars still resonate in my memory as being something so unique. Flavor, everything about it was just special. And then they went away. And so I wanted to see if I could recreate the flavor and experience that I had in my memory. And so that's ultimately what this became.
And were you successful? Does that bring back?
No idea.
Well, just everything you named that's in it,
Yeah.
it's a party. Dude, how did you, like, that's a lot to bring together in one cigar and make it work.
Yeah, and this is, there's a couple different ways to blend. One is you take a product that exists and you just start tweaking it. You take it in a new direction. So you take that cigar and you take the wrapper off and you put something else on, you see what happens. And then you change a filler and then you see what happens. But this blend we actually just did on paper from scratch. Looked at a bunch of different tobaccos and said, okay, this might work. Let's try this. And generally they suck. Immediately.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Terrible. And this was no different.
So that's why it's easier to start with something.
You start with something. You start with something, and then you disrupt it, and then you fix it. With this case, actually, with Sterling too. Funny enough, both these blends were written on paper, submitted to be made, and then tweaked from there. But I really wanted Nicaragua and Costa Rica together because that's what this blend was from back in the day.
It sounds amazing because we know what Nicaragua is, we know what Costa Rica is, and it's not like those are two opposite types of tobaccos. So when you put those together, you get a really unique experience.
I think Costa Rica, I've had pure Costa Rican. I don't particularly like it. But used thoughtfully in a blend, like Costa Rica, it's a very kind of salty almost. So you almost use it, at least I do, like salt. You don't want to over salt your food because then it's salty.
Right.
But a touch of salt creates saliva and makes everything taste better. That's kind of the role Costa Rican plays, at least in
I got you. That makes sense. That makes sense. And so let me ask you this. This is a question that I have that I've never asked a professional.
Well, you're not this time either, but you can ask me.
So I can't stand cigars that when I put them in my mouth and I'm smoking them, within like 10 minutes, my palate is dry. So dry. What leaf causes that?
Lots of different leaves, but that is a overwhelming dominant characteristic of some specific tobaccos, where it is just astringent. And more importantly, it's not what it's impacting, it's what it's not impacting. And it's not impacting the sides of your palate, which is where you typically receive salty, sour acid, which is what stimulates saliva. So for whatever reason, I would consider that blend off balance, because you can have mild blends, strong blends, creamy blends, light-bodied blends, but you need to still have balance on your palate, which means some participation of saliva, right? But for example, there's a tobacco from the DR called Olor, very famous Dominican seed, that is incredibly drying, obviously drying. But there's some tobaccos from Nicaragua and Honduras, and that's why it's very important when you're blending. If you don't have familiarity with each tobacco first, you've got to taste them pure first.
Okay.
It's what I consider it's a character exploration. So you can't just write a movie if you don't develop your characters first, right? And not that you would necessarily see that in the movie, but the actor knows more about their story so they can play the role better. Right. Which I always think is interesting when you see interviews with actors and they're asked about their character and they can answer about things that never happened in the movie. Like, as
if they're that person.
Exactly.
Right.
And so for me, the same principle applies with leaves. You have to get to know each one of those characters intimately by themselves. You have to know how they burn, where they impact, what they taste like. Is your mouth dry? Is your mouth wet? You identify the full suite of characteristics of that tobacco. And then you taste another one, and then you taste another one. So when you develop a story, you understand who's the lead, who's background, who's, where's the music, what's the set. Each tobacco plays their own role. You have to be very intentional about the role that they play.
Absolutely.
That was a long answer to say that you had a dry mouth.
So, I thought it was like limited to Connecticut's, and it's not.
It is not, but you are right. Connecticut, especially true Connecticut, that wrapper is also a bit bitter and astringent. And so Connecticut wrapped cigars benefit from having other tobaccos to counter the drying effect of the wrapper.
I appreciate that long ass answer. And it explains.
And that's all the time we have today. So
gotta go, guys. Great. So let me ask you this: what made you want to do Timeless? What made you go? You know what? I want to do this.
Well, at the time, it's when I joined Nat Sherman International, and Nat Sherman at that time was having a bit of a crisis with their cigar business. It had gotten tired. It had been discounted, and the Sherman family really wanted to breathe new life into the cigar business. So they brought me over. I was at Davidoff before, and we just started from scratch. And talking to the family, and really trying to understand at that time the Nat Sherman story. It was just this idea of timelessness just kept coming back into the story. At the time, it was 80 years old as a brand, and yet still as relevant that day as it was in 1930. So there was just this idea of timelessness, and so we created Timeless to really kind of pivot away from the old Nat Sherman and start a new chapter. And Timeless Prestige was really what that was. The first blend I did when I joined. It was the first sort of flag in the ground of starting this new chapter. And then from there, we did Timeless. It was called Timeless Dominican, Timeless Nicaragua were the two. But in 2018, we actually did a full kind of reorganization of all the cigars that we had made under Nat Sherman and created more proper, organized brand families for these different blends to live. And so we basically consolidated. So Sterling, for example, what you're smoking, was called Nat Sherman Sterling. In 2018, we put it under this Timeless umbrella. So actually, I mean, if you go back and look at videos from like 2018 trade shows, it was a lot of explaining this new sort of categorization of brands and blends and what's what. But now fast forward, we had the opportunity when Nat Sherman closed. We formed a company, and then we were able to acquire the brands and continue the work. And so now it's interesting. Timeless was the first blend and brand that I did under Nat Sherman to help really kind of get Nat Sherman back on its feet at that time. Now here we are 10 years later, and it's Timeless again that's helping me get back on my feet with Ferio Tego. But this time I get to claim the work.
Right.
It was almost like, I was telling someone the other day, it was almost like I was a ghostwriter. I had all these great blends and projects and brands out there, but they always had another name on it. And no problem. That was my job. I was very proud to do it.
Right.
But it's cool now to be able to author the work.
And now it's yours.
Yes.
But you worked on it in the beginning. It was yours then,
yes,
but you were doing it for somebody else.
That's right.
And so let me ask you this, though. Like, with Nat Sherman's history, I mean, one of the richest histories that we have in the industry, were you a little bit sad when they closed the doors in New York?
Devastated.
Man, dude.
Yeah. But
the pictures on let me tell everybody right quick.
Okay.
If you want to take a walk through memory lane, go to his Instagram account because it goes way back. And I bet I spent 45 minutes going through your page. Just the history you captured while you were on that journey.
Yeah.
Loved it. The pictures inside Nat Sherman, timeless.
Yeah. That closing was not plan A. Plan A was selling the company. And we made a lot of progress. And it was a done deal, to be honest with you. And then COVID hit, and that just disrupted everyone's ability to do whatever they were planning on doing, right? But we thought we were still able to do a deal, and we kept working. It ultimately just, every time we tried, it just kept falling apart, and we had to close. So I think we announced in July of 2020 that we were closed, that we didn't successfully sell, we were closing, and then we ultimately closed end of October, I think.
Yeah, it was a shockwave through the whole industry.
It sucked. It sucked, but it wasn't because of anything we did. That would have sucked more.
Right.
So if no one wanted to buy our cigars anymore and we had to go out of business, that's a problem. If we were so poor in service and retail that no one wanted to come in our store and we had to close, that would be a problem. That wasn't the case. We were at the top of our game, and shit happens. And, you know, it is what it is.
Pandemic is an ass kicker.
I'll tell you, I joked early on that ultimately it was a COVID death. It was.
And being in New York, it was not the same as it was for us in Texas.
No.
I mean, our cigar shop never closed. You know what I mean? Now, we weren't able to come in and sit down, but we were able to get cigars all the time. In New York, you guys shut down.
It was absolutely shut down. In fact, if you go back to my Instagram, there is, I think I saved it in stories. There's a whole bunch of stuff of COVID New York City.
Okay.
I drove from Harlem to Times Square in one light cycle. I was the only car on Broadway for 50 blocks.
Any people on the streets?
Nothing. One bike delivery. It's one of the craziest videos.
What was
the movie with was it Will Smith and like New York is completely empty? God, I'm forgetting the name of the movie.
Was it the Independence Day?
No.
No.
What am I thinking of? Do you know what I'm talking about? I can't remember the name. Anyway, it was insane. So there was no way to do business. There's nobody there. So we were closed. God, we were closed 4 months. Lights out.
The bills don't stop.
Bills don't stop.
Right.
Especially when you lease a building in Times Square. That bill keeps coming.
Now, maybe you posted it since I went over all your stuff, but I didn't see the ending. I felt like I was watching a movie.
Oh, the end's good.
The building. What's up with the building?
It's there. It was a lease. So
the clock
is off the building.
Where's that at?
I'm assuming in a Altria archive somewhere. Yeah, they're actually. I'll be honest. Altria was the company that owned Nat Sherman. Still owns Nat Sherman. This wasn't their plan A either. They really have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration and reverence for the history and the culture and our side of the business. It's just not core to their business. And so that's why they decided to exit. But they didn't want to close the store and shut down the cigar company. That's why we had the opportunity to sell, to allow it to live on. It just, the ultimately circumstances way outside of anyone's control prohibited that from happening. But now fast forward, that also gave us a great opportunity, right? I mean, when one door closes, another opens, and we certainly opened this door wide and ran right in.
Kind of kicked it open.
We kicked it open.
Or the doors came off the hinges.
But what a great opportunity. And again, I mean, Altria was so thoughtful and enthusiastic when we did approach them and say, can we form a company and just buy the brands? That wasn't contemplated before. They were not going to sell the brands. It was, we sell the company or we just hold the brands and that's it.
They had to be happy, though, that it was you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? This is the only guy we would really want to do this with.
That is exactly the way the conversation went. And what an incredible honor,
And I can tell, because here at TPE, you're set up in the same area as Davidoff.
We're in their booth.
So you have great relationships from what you formed decades ago.
So I worked for Davidoff for 9 years. I left to join Nat Sherman. But Davidoff bought Camacho, right? Way back. The Aroa family, Christian and his father, made the Metropolitan host for Nat Sherman since the 1990s. When Davidoff bought Camacho, they also acquired that relationship, and Nat Sherman kept it at Davidoff. So that agro-industrious factory that makes Camacho today is the factory that makes Nat Sherman, made Nat Sherman host, now the Metropolitan host. So when I got to Nat Sherman, the first call I made was to my Davidoff people saying, hey, by the way, I'm learning what's happening, and I see that you're making Host, and obviously we're going to keep Host there. And so we went from working for Davidoff for 9 years to now working with Davidoff for another 9 years as they continue to make that blend for us. And then fast forward after all of the acquisition of the brands back with Ferio Tego, we were in regular touch with all our manufacturing partners, kind of keeping them up to date with what we were doing. And Davidoff team said, well, how are you going to go to market? And we said, we have absolutely no idea. We're still figuring that out. And they said, well, let's consider a distribution agreement. And we were looking at some other fulfillment options too. And so we engaged with them, and it was crystal clear this was a great opportunity. And so we announced that, I guess, in end of April, May, that they are our distributor in the U.S. And so, I mean, how incredible, man. I mean, we launched in October, and immediately we had a national sales force going into stores, talking about our products, and away we go. So we're, at 15 weeks now in market.
And you're killing it.
And we're, over.
I mean, I know you don't like to say that, but you're killing it.
Man, we are, we're doing great. We are doing great.
I'm happy to hear that. I love, especially after taking the time to go back through your page, I love great stories. You're living a great story. It's
a great story, man. And I'm lucky, and I have a great partner in this business, the former CFO of Nat Sherman, Brendan. We worked closely together building the business. We worked closely together trying to sell the business. We worked closely together closing the business. And so now we get to work closely together to build a business that's ours. And it's just it's an awesome opportunity. It's been a tremendous amount of work from everybody, from Davidoff and their people, the Casada family, Plasencia family, Cigar Rings, Action Label, Humidiv Group. We got.
What's your favorite part of the business? I mean, what drives you? I mean, I know you're one of those guys that you're driven to be successful no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, that's not it.
I know. So that's why I'm saying I don't want to hear that answer.
No, man. I want to. I have a degree in drums.
I know.
Right? So,
and where from?
Berkeley College of Music.
Boom.
Yeah. So all I wanted to do was play music, right? Why? Well, because playing drums was my favorite thing to do. So if I can make a living at it, that sounded like a good idea. When I got to college, I started enjoying cigars, and it turns out enjoying cigars was some of my favorite things to do, right? And so being an artist, you're passionate about something, you like something, if you can make a living at it, great. And so that's what I did. But I find that the cigar world and the music world are very similar in that, number one, it is different every day, right? You are sharing a moment with somebody that is meaningful, that you can repeat, but it will never be the same.
Right.
Right? Impossible. You can play the same song every night, but it's never the same. Something is different, right? Those types of just inimitable moments, music, cigars, whatever it is, it's just such a special thing, when you can share it with someone. Now you add to that this idea of creative, when you write a song, you write a song. When you record, you record. You try and make it the best that you can make it. Then it turns out people don't like it. And that's a gut punch when you work that hard.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the same with this. You
Yes.
put everything into making something that you believe is the best you can do. And then people love it, and they talk about it, and they post about it, but then someone else lights it up and is like, oh, this sucks. And moves on, And
you see, you're like,
that's all my work.
Right.
But it didn't hit for you. And so we got to go back and write a new song,
But also, you can't please everyone.
Of course
There's
not.
so many palates out there that there's
bet.
some guys that are never going to like your cigars.
Yeah, that's fine. But for me, to answer your question, that's what I love about it.
That's your drive.
Yeah, it's every day is different. But every day I am doing something that I'm genuinely passionate about, and the people I am doing it with are genuinely passionate. And if we can work together and everybody achieves new levels of success, everyone can feed their families because this store is selling my cigars and he's making money on that product. That's great. I'm helping him feed his family. The factories are growing in volume because he's buying more of my cigars. That's great because their families can eat. You know, that type of just reciprocal support and camaraderie and admiration. What's better than that, you know?
Last week, someone commented on my YouTube channel. Some wacko, I'm sure.
No. On YouTube?
Yeah. And
can't be.
She said, I hope they close all the cigar stores in America. Tobacco is evil, blah, blah, blah. And I just responded, you know what? I agree that you have 100% freedom to say what you want. I appreciate that. I believe in freedom, but I also support the cigar industry because, you know what? It supports my local people here in town, and it supports these farmers that otherwise wouldn't have jobs. They have education now. They never did back in the day. They have, healthcare now.
Yeah. Blanket statements like that
Right.
are just, they're clearly uninformed, you know? And, I mean, let's face it, we see stuff like that in every industry, in any category. It's, you know, people feel brave and they just post things like that. But the reality is, I mean, look, I didn't grow up in a cigar culture, you know? So when I gave my parents the good news that I got a job at a cigar shop, they're like, what are you talking about? You know? But now fast forward, my family still doesn't smoke cigars, but through me,
They've educated them.
But they also have a different perception, not just of industry, but what it can do. And I'll tell you, man, like I did for years, I did a fundraiser for my birthday for my hometown high school. And it was entirely built around cigars. Manufacturers would donate products. People would pay for auction lots. It was just a birthday party. My last birthday party, we raised $88,000
For the school.
for the school.
Wow.
All in 10 years, we raised about $450,000. But all cigar people. And they'd never been to my high school. They didn't know anyone there. But what did it take to raise $450,000 in 10 years? Just took a bunch of people who cared.
Right.
You know, that's it.
That's all it ever takes.
That's all you need to do is just care. And if you spend a little time learning about the business, learning about the people, doesn't matter if you smoke cigars, it opens up your eyes and perception to how something so simple, so obviously misunderstood, how special it is to the people who love it.
So simple, but so complex. That's what we love about it.
You
You know what I
bet.
mean? It's like,
You can, once you think you have it figured out, then you open one more door
boom.
and realize,
oh,
I mean, look, man, I've done this. This is my 22nd year in the cigar business. And there is way more I don't know than stuff I do. And I've been lucky. I've spent, countless hours and days in Dominican Republic and Nicaragua and Honduras at the side of greatness. Manolo Quesada, the Plasencias. I mean, Lito Gomez. I've spent hours and hours in fields and in factories and following curing and fermentation and aging and growing and soil and all this stuff. And I couldn't even begin to explain any of it with any level of expertise. It's like I'm still in awe of every single step and process. And I'm lucky that I had the good fortune to learn a little along the way. But man, these people are
they're magicians.
yeah.
I mean, what they do, really.
How do you take a seed that is the size of smaller than the tip of a ballpoint, and you grow that into a 6-foot plant in 12 weeks?
And then you take leaves from one plant, mix it with another plant. I mean,
4 years later, by the way.
How? I don't even understand how tobacco evolved to where it is now. Like, think about when you go back before there were cigars, cigarettes, whatever. Indigenous people were using tobacco.
Yeah.
Who even thought of that? You know what I mean? Hey, here's this plant. I'm going to rip this leaf off of it, and I'm going to smoke it.
And I'm going to stick it in this pipe. And
right.
Right. Dude, I've read a bunch of books. You know who's actually got crazy knowledge about stuff like that is Nick Melillo. Because he's gone so deep on the history of Connecticut and what it means to the culture and everything. And he could probably spin off some rhymes with like actual answers.
Real shit?
Yeah, real shit. I can't even start. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Well, the other thing I love, and I know you experience it way more than I do, but when you get like this nugget that opens your eyes of information and you're just like, wow, I never thought of that.
You want one of my favorite ones?
Love to hear it.
I landed in Dominican Republic. It's got to be like 04, 05. Lito Gomez picked me up at the airport, and we went straight to the farm. And I had known Lito for a long time. And when I started smoking cigars in late 90s, La Flor Dominicana was probably the mildest cigar money could buy.
Really?
Is El Jacos. The strongest thing at that time was the 2000 series, which was a Cameroon wrapper, had some body to it. But, when you look at La Flor today, generally you don't think of it as mild, creamy, and elegant. And so at that time, when we were headed out there, he was really starting to roll out Ligero, Double Ligero, and those blends. And so driving through Cibao Valley, I'm like, Lito, like, I love your story and I love your cigars, but how do you go from being this really mellow, elegant cigar to being this monster in body? Like, how do you even achieve it if a leaf is a leaf and, you're still in the same place? How do you go from there to there? And we were literally driving down the highway, and he slams on the brakes and pulls over, and there's a field right there. And he goes, "That's how." I'm like, I'm not tracking here, bro, And he said, "Do you see that barn?" I said, "Of course I see the barn." He goes, "What do you see?" He goes, Is this a trick? I see a curing barn." And he's like, "Right, and what do you see?" I'm like, "I see tobacco." He's like, "That's the problem." I'm like, "Okay, walk me through." In Dominican Republic, the traditional style of curing was done in open air barns, basically. So you could kind of open and close the sides with thatching, but basically you had posts, frame, and then you would suspend leaves in open air. And so because it's open air, the leaves would dry and cure relatively quickly and would not have the opportunity to really develop and get more mature and develop richness. Cuba, they typically cure in larger barns that are fully enclosed, which gives you more opportunity to elongate the process and allow those leaves to develop and become richer and fuller and more character. And then you can finish and dry. But once the leaf is dry, the color is fixed, and there really is not more opportunity to develop strength and flavor and richness once curing is complete and the leaf is dry. So Lito basically adopted the larger barn, Cuban-style, closed barn, elongated curing, and completely changed the face of his business.
Wow. So, yeah.
But that's curing. That's literally just curing. And it makes that big of an impact.
I thought it was all the plant.
But it's the plant. It's the soil. It's all of it. All of it. But the simple change in curing, elongating the process, and allowing the leaves to develop is, how simple is that? And yet, the entire country of Dominican Republic always did it this way until they didn't.
And Dominican Republic has always been known for that lighter side of cigars. So that just blows you away that they're just like, all right, well, we're going to change this. Boom. It's heavy now.
Yep. Now, obviously, different seeds also result in different, strength, different capacity for strength. Other growing techniques change, but curing of all things. And it's probably the process that we talk about the least, right? Everyone talks about aging. Sometimes, someone learns something about fermentation, so they start talking about that for a while. Curing, we don't talk about that much. It's not that exciting.
Right.
It's one of the most important steps.
And you know what's amazing to me about everything in the cigar industry is it's all, not all, but the key to me is the more people age things, it becomes amazing, which might be timeless.
Aging, whether you're aging tobacco or you're aging people, the process is the same. You go from, young and in your face to old, elegant, and graceful, right? People and tobacco, exact same. So, but there is a cost, right? Every year that you don't sell that, you are carrying that cost. The most expensive part of making anything is the time from raw material to cash. Then it comes down to investment. What's it worth? And are you willing to invest the time? And that's not just aging, that's curing. It deserves, how long do you have to cure? As long as it takes. How long do you have to ferment? As long as it takes. And that could be a year, that could be 16 months, that could be 20 months. You don't know until you start. And then the question is, are you willing to give it the time that it needs, or do you need to generate cash? And we have always worked with partners that subscribe to the first model, which is you invest in the time it takes, period.
And do you see a lot of that in the industry? Because we have more cigar companies than we've ever had.
Yep.
How many companies rush that process?
A lot.
You know where I notice it? On the retro hell.
Retro is important. There's two places where I think you can identify flaws. The first is dry smoking before you fire it up. I know some people like to, write paragraphs in their reviews about the merit of their cold draw dry smoke. I will tell you from a manufacturing side, we don't care at all. Really, that's not our intent. We want you to fire it up, taste the smoke, and enjoy it. The dry taste is
You're not blending for a dry.
No.
Right.
But the dry, when you cold draw, that is a great opportunity to identify flaws. And you would get mustiness, moldiness, mildew, any of those types of flavors and aromas before you fire it up. And ammonia is the other one.
Ammonia, that's the one that kills me. I'm like,
that is clearly
not aged.
Rushed fermentation.
And so I guess whenever you take the time to do it right, the scary part is you're waiting all this time before you can make a product. What if it sucks at the end and you're like, dude, we just wasted 4 years?
Bro.
And how much money?
It is crippling fear. Crippling fear. I mean,
you stress about it?
Endlessly. I mean, dude, we spent all this time getting Ferio Tego ready. We had boxes made in Nicaragua. We had components coming from Spain and from China. We had 2 different factories, one in Dominican, one in Nicaragua. So half the boxes had to go to Nicaragua. The other half we had to ship to Dominican. We had tobaccos from all over. It was
wow.
It was crazy. So yeah, man.
All the working pieces that are nowhere near each other,
and all you can do is wait, and then see.
In this day and age,
and then inevitably, someone posts, "It sucks. It's not worth it. It's too expensive." Well, okay. I disagree.
Right.
But okay. It is what it is. But listen.
Hey, I think you're doing a great job.
It is worth it. It's worth the time. It's worth the time in aging. It's worth the time in thoughtful development. It's worth the time in building relationships. It is worth the time to sit down and enjoy it. It's worth the time.
I agree 100%, and I would love to keep this going, but I know you got to get back.
I got to go sell some of these things.
Right. So, hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. This was awesome. You do a great job.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I'd love to come back and do it again.
And
thank you.
If you need anything from us, let me know.
I'm grateful. Ferio Tego, come and find us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.